When one thinks of censorship, your mind likely drifts to pixelated visuals or beeped curse words. However, sometimes video game developers decide to get extra creative in the face of the ratings boards, and the end result can turn out to be weird and wonderful in its own right, and sometimes even more entertaining than the original. I'm Sai for WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 most hilarious instances of video game censorship. Number 10. Coffee bars. Earthbound. Despite its innocent appearance, Earthbound isn't exactly safe for kids. It's full of disturbing things like brainwashed cultists, demons, and an actual scene where one of the characters is torn apart limb from limb. With so many questionable themes, it's obvious that some parts of the original Japanese version of Earthbound had to be removed. But which part did the Western world decide was too problematic? Well, it was the alcohol, duh. Yes, apparently the US government thought that adults having a casual drink at a bar was way more controversial than demonic rituals. The American port of the game replaced all of the bars in Earthbound with coffee shops and turned every inebriated NPC into a struggling caffeine addict. The amount of effort that went into cleaning the streets of Earthbound's towns from alcohol consumption is truly astounding. There's not a single mention of it left in the game, and the people's weird obsession with coffee is actually written in a strangely endearing way. Number 9. Backside lens glare. Devil May Cry 5. When it comes to the old so bad it's good cliche, the obnoxious lens glare from DMC5 might just fit the bill. The censorship happens during the stage where Dante rescues Trish from one of Urizen's puppets. Dante manages to slice the demon in half with his motorcycle, releasing naked Trish from his belly. The original version of the scene features a brief shot of Trish's bare buttocks, and as you may expect, some people didn't want this kind of horrendous indecent exposure on their platform. The PlayStation 4 version of DMC5 covers up Trish's posterior with a bright purple lens flare that lights up half the screen. The source of it is probably the headlight on Dante's motorcycle, given the similar colour, but the placement of it makes no sense at all. How would the light be able to appear behind the motorcycle where Dante and Trish are standing? And what kind of amazing reflective properties would Trish's behind need to have to cast the light back with the intensity of an exploding supernova? The edit is so obnoxious that you can't help but laugh at it, especially since its purpose is to cover up 2 whole seconds of barely visible butt. Number 8. 20 Bunnies. 20 Ladies. 20 Ladies is a not safe for work platformer originally released for the Switch, where the goal is to collect images of naked women scattered throughout each stage. Despite Nintendo usually being the one to crack down on sexual content, the game's themes actually struck a nerve with Sony this time around. The company didn't want inappropriate content to appear on the PlayStation Store, so the people responsible for 20 Ladies had to cut out nudity from their game about nudity. And the way that they did this is pretty amazing. In 2021, when 20 Ladies was supposed to come out for the PS4, the developers replaced all of the nude women in their game with pictures of adorable anthropomorphic bunnies. They even changed the game's title to 20 Bunnies, as the original didn't make much sense anymore. Although the complete redesign was likely a joke at the expense of Sony's rules, the new version of the game actually managed to pass through and became available for the PlayStation 4 as well as the PlayStation 5 a little bit later. Number 7. From Hell to Tropical Island. Jamalami. Generally speaking, religious themes aren't the best thing to put in your game, as they tend to cause a lot of controversy in certain communities. This is especially true if the religious theme you chose to include is a scene of a young girl dying and getting sent to hell. The rhythm game Jamalami, just like its predecessor Parappa the Rapper, is a fever dream of weird ideas. In stage 6, the main character Lammy dies by slipping on a banana peel, and her soul gets transported to hell, where she needs to perform a sick guitar solo for an angry demon lady. It shouldn't come as a shock that this concept wasn't really well received in America, which is why the US release of Jamalami makes heavy and hilarious changes to the scene. Instead of dying, Lammy catapults herself into the stratosphere and starts orbiting around the planet so fast that she causes time to go backwards, like the Superman film. When she finally lands back on Earth, she ends up in the past where her town has been reverted to a volcanic island. If you think that makes no sense, it's probably because it doesn't. Number 6. Shaved Hitler, Wolfenstein 2: The New Order. Due to its inclusion of Nazi imagery, the original Wolfenstein game was banned in Germany up until 2019. Obviously, Bethesda didn't want the sequel to suffer a similar fate, so in order to appease the strict German law, they decided to remove all references to the Nazi movement from the game, including Hitler's mustache. That's right, not even the dictator's signature patch of facial hair could be spared. Though every other part of Hitler's in-game model remains the same, for some reason the mustache was a step too far. It's pretty funny to compare the two versions together, as even without the facial hair and people calling him Hitler, it's still really obvious who the character is supposed to be. But then again, this change did prove effective, allowing Wolfenstein 2 to appear on the German market, so you can't really argue with the results. Oh, special shout out to Persona 2, which did a very similar thing by giving Hitler sunglasses, which doesn't really stop him from being Hitler. Now he's just Hitler on holiday, I guess. Number 5, kitty photos, Grand Theft Auto Vice City. It shouldn't be surprising that a franchise about running pedestrians over with stolen cars would stir up some controversy. However, when it comes to the Japanese release of Vice City, it wasn't the violence that caused the Japanese localization team to step in and make adjustments. It was actually a raunchy set of pictures. In the international version of the game, once the players acquire Diaz's mansion and turn it into their own hideout, Tommy can deck out his new office with some half-naked pictures of the game's iconic porn star, Candy Sucks. Because Japanese laws regarding sexual content in video games were very strict at the time of Vice City's release, the pictures had to be replaced with something else, and the localization team had the perfect substitute in mind. And so every sensitive photo of Candy Sucks was replaced with pictures of flowers and adorable little kittens. Adorable enough to distract you from the fact that they are there to cover up a completely different enlarged body part. Number 4, Celeste's Leap of Faith, Final Fantasy VI. On the side of the morbidly hilarious, we have Celeste from Final Fantasy VI and her Leap of Faith, which in the original Japanese version was actually a suicide attempt. For obvious reasons, the Western translators didn't want to keep the original context of the scene in the game. However, the alternative dialogue they came up with is quite frankly ridiculous. In the original version, Celeste visits a cliffside after seeing her grandfather die. She's finally lost every person she cares about, and overwhelmed by grief, she convinces herself to jump. But in the English translation of the game, the explicit talk of suicide is replaced with Celeste talking about how she doesn't feel well and how she's heard tales of people jumping off of cliffs to, quote, perk themselves up. Considering the sensitive nature of the subject, I don't think I need to make a joke at the end of this one. The whole translation is a joke. Number 3, sorry Europe, South Park The Stick of Truth. Just like the actual South Park show, Stick of Truth cares very little about censorship. The game's creators didn't beat around the bush, and naturally a story about a Nazi zombie virus turning dead fetuses into mutated monsters didn't sit well with everyone. The European Union stepped in to censor the problematic bits, but even then South Park's classic sense of humour didn't relent. Instead of cutting the story into pieces or replacing parts of it with something more tame, Stick of Truth developers decided to turn the whole censorship deal into a joke in itself. Every censored part of the game is replaced with an image of a sad marble statue in front of an EU flag, along with a very detailed narration of what was supposed to happen. The joke is brilliant, as seeing the condemned events described in a calm and collected manner somehow makes them feel even more ridiculous than playing them. And let's not forget about the passive-aggressive remarks towards the European censorship that only add more to this already glorious experience. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade, or just put a still image over them and describe them in great detail, that works too. Number 2, Tickle Torture, Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. The Metal Gear Solid series is no stranger to extreme violence. It's the only franchise on Earth that allows you to punch children with a rocket fist, so you know it's not afraid of controversy. And yet, during the production of Peace Walker, Hideo Kojima was forced to alter the game a bit to lower its age rating on the Japanese market. Due to the Japanese government's stance on the betrayal of war in games, some of the more violent scenes in Peace Walker had to be toned down. Most notably the torture scene where Dr. Strangelove mercilessly electrocutes Snake for information. In the Japanese version of Peace Walker, the shocking is instead replaced with the sadistic and abhorrent act of tickling. The shock rods become tickling batons that send happy, make you laugh signals to the victim's brain, and Snake's screams of agony turn into uncontrollable laughter in the face of his ruthless captor. The best part about this edit is that most of the visuals from the original scenes are left intact, so all of the happy tickling and laughter are still accompanied by ominous sparks of electricity and Snake's bruised up body. And number 1, no deaths allowed, Half-Life. As was evidenced by Wolfenstein 2, the German government takes censorship very seriously. This is why the German version of Half-Life is so different from the original. Long story short, back when Half-Life 1 was getting released all over the globe, the German government instilled very serious restrictions regarding video game violence. Games weren't allowed to glorify violence or even show people dying on screen, and so Valve had to remove all scenes of human death from their game if they wanted to publish Half-Life in Germany. For this reason, all human enemies in the German version of Half-Life alive are replaced with robots, and none of the friendly human NPCs can be killed. Instead, if you shoot at them, they eventually decide to give up, sit down, and then just sort of ponder their existence while occasionally shaking their heads at you, appalled by your violent tendencies. The difference is so wild that you almost regret having the option to kill your friendly NPCs. And let's be honest, being able to send them into an existential crisis sounds way more interesting. When it comes to censorship, not even the most well-known franchises are safe. Click the link on screen now to watch 10 iconic video games that were banned for ridiculous reasons. Leave a comment down below on other examples of hilarious censorship. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Head over to WhatCulture.com for more content every day. I've been Si for WhatCulture, and have a good week.